I know when I first started out with Power Automate, I was a little scared of the expressions and the functions, mainly because it was a little bit broken back then. But yeah, I find out that people are still a little bit scared of these expressions. So we'll talk about them. But first, I'm going to do a little intro. So my name is Josh Cook, and I am a Power Platform Principal Architect at K Micro. I am a Power Automate super user. I'm a Power Virtual Agent super user. That makes me the first ever Power Automate and Power Virtual Agent super user on the community forum. I have ADHD, which is uh, so my topic might go a little off track, or or that's my excuse if it goes off track at least, is that I have ADHD. I use it as a crutch. My wife doesn't like that, but I do that. And then I'm really big into blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Actually, blockchain is kind of what got me into um, not Power Platform, but knowing what blockchain was got me into the space that I'm in right now. So um, yeah, it's I'll always remember that. So and crypto, I'm not rich, so I obviously didn't get into crypto super early, but I do have a few coins here and there, and just hopefully one day I'll be that rich guy with crypto, but not right now. I'm also a Microsoft Business Applications MVP for this. I think this is my second. Yeah, I think I just got renewed second time. So yeah, second year in a row. And then my QR code. I know it looks a little broken, but that is my QR code. If you scan it, it'll bring you to my link tree, and my link tree link is also down there. It's just linktree flow alt delete. That's my handle on Twitter. So yeah, follow me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Send me a message if you want. Again, I'm from Calgary, so if anyone's from Calgary, definitely let me know in the message, or if you do connect with me, just so that I know that you're from this group. Other than that, we will continue on. The agenda for today, we're going to be talking about what are expressions. And why should we use expressions? Because yeah, they're there, but should we use them? Probably. And I'll go over why. And then there's obviously going to be some tips, and I like to call them tips, but they're actually things that could happen when it's broken and things that make me mad, which I'm assuming they'll make you mad. So I'm going to go over little tips that I deal with those things, so we don't get mad, because I don't like getting mad, and I'm sure no one else does. And then we're going to go through some demos of the expressions that I'm talking about, and go from there. And then Q&A. We're always having to do Q&A. So if there are questions, though, I will stop throughout the presentation to answer them, or I can get to them at the end. Again, I don't feel like this is going to be a full hour, so we'll definitely have time to chat at the end. Okay, so Power Automate. What are expressions? So expressions are actually based off Logic App's workflow definition. Now, when I first started doing Power Platform related things, I was actually started out in Azure using Logic Apps. So I was already familiar with the workflow definition. And to be frank, it's not very great. The workflow definition, it's all right. Like you can do a lot of good things with it, but since all the releases of all this new stuff like Power FX, which is for Power Apps, and now they're putting it into Dataverse, um, if you compare it with that, you know, um, Power FX kind of just destroys Logic App's workflow definition. But eventually it will be into Power Automate. So maybe like eventually this whole slide deck will be totally irrelevant. That's okay, because right now it's not. So and I put a picture of expressions in there because that's not what we were talking about. So there's different types of expressions that we can use, and it's funny because they call them expressions, but they also call them functions. So it's kind of confusing. What I think is going on is I think Power Automate calls them expressions, and then Logic Apps calls them functions. And because it's based off the Logic Apps workflow definition, they're going to call them functions. So when I say functions and expressions within this context, it's the same thing. So there's different types. So we have the string functions, collection functions. Collection functions are going to be with like arrays or lists of items. Logical comparison, that's going to be like equals and stuff like that. We will go through all of this after, but and then we have conversion functions. We have implicit data type conversions, math functions. I like math functions because, doing math and Power Automate is awesome. A date and time functions, always using the date and time because of the way date and time is stored in Power Automate. URI parsing functions and manipulation functions. with JSON and XML. So with that, why should we use expressions? So, and I put a picture of a monster up there because it's not a monster. We're not scared of them. That's why we're going to use them. So first of all, we are going to use them because we can use less actions, which means our flows will look a lot cleaner, and it'll run a lot better as well. But mainly it's for less actions. Like I can do an expression. It could be a complex one for like checking to see if something exists within another collection. And instead of doing a bunch of different actions, I can most likely do it in one action. Now, again, it might be a little bit more complex, but if I have a really complex flow and I want to do this with every single one, then I'm going to be able to reduce my my API call limits, which is what a lot of people are running into nowadays, because with the licensing and how the licensing works now is where you have API call limits within each flow within your own user account, and each user only has 2,000 with the basic license, and you can run into that limit of 2,000 API call limits a day very quickly if you're just kind of using if you're not really using expressions, or you probably, yeah, you could get away with it, but we use it so we can get a cleaner flow, and we can also save time. We save time by using less actions. So this one's a little bit of a caveat, because if you're brand new and you're still like trying to figure out how these expressions work, maybe using a bunch of them might not save you time, but they will save you using less actions, which will make your flow look cleaner, which might save you time later, especially when you have to support it or when you have to modify it or update it. And then we have trigger expressions. Now, these are conditions actually, but I like to use these because they're really helpful, especially when you're talking with, I see them used a lot in SharePoint triggers. So when an item is modified, created, we can actually set it so the flow is only going to trigger on a certain column of a certain value. So if the column value is like if the column is status, and we only want the flow to trigger if the status is open, not closed or in progress, then when I'll showcase how to go through that. You'll basically be able to set up a trigger condition where only the status, when the status is equal to open, that it'll actually trigger your flow. So we will use less actions and API calls because it's not constantly triggering the flow, even on simple create or an update, but you're only triggering on a certain property or column. And again, less API calls are always what I'm going for, because I have so many flows running under my account that I even have a premium license, and I'm still running. I have a lot of API calls because of so many things on my account. So I'm trying to always save them everywhere I go. It's like I'm a extreme couponer, but for API calls. And then sometimes, and this is very rare, but I've seen it where sometimes an expression must be used to achieve what is needed or the requirement. Now, again, I haven't seen this too much, but I have seen it where it's not really possible to do what I was doing unless I was using the expression. And a good example would be substring, and I'll get into that. But substrings can be used, but so substrings can be used to basically grab something within a string, and a string is text, really. So it's a text. So if I have some text that says "hello world" or something, and then in my substring, I only want to get the world, right? So I want a substring. I just want to get the world's string. Now that's possible using an action in Power Automate called the substring. But for something very complex, where if I need to go in and do maybe two substrings per action, I will not be able to do that with the action. I actually have to use the expression builder and use an expression. So that's kind of where I would use that. And then better performance. So, and this kind of ties in with everything that you see on the screen right now. So better performance as in using less actions, and better performance as in if there's an apply to each loop that gets created when I'm trying to do something, when I don't really need that apply to each, because maybe there's only one item in that array, or I'm only expecting one item, but it's still putting that apply to each loop in there. It's just a waste of a call, and also it's just poor performance when that's happening. So we'll be able to actually skip the apply to each loop or bypass it when we don't need it. And with everything else in here as well, with the trigger expressions, cleaner flow, it'll all be better performant at runtime and during the support when you're editing and updating the flow. Now I do have some expression tips next. So the expression tips that I'm going to go over are basically, and I see this a lot in the forums, in the community forums, but all date and time is in Power Automate is stored as UTC. So that's great and all because a lot of systems are just UTC. Like if I was talking about SharePoint, SharePoint's also UTC. So if I wanted just to do a quick conversion and put the date into SharePoint, I really don't have to do a conversion because I can just pass it in there. But if I want to, if I'm posting this somewhere new and I want the person that's seeing this date to actually, understand what the date is, I probably don't want to be passing them UTC unless that is their actual like time zone. I'd want to convert that into the user's time zone of whoever's interacting with the flow or the app or whatever it is. And for tips, enable/disable the new expression editor. So there is a new expression editor. It's in preview. There are a couple of caveats on using it. It is way better than the original editor. So if you have never used it, I will showcase how to turn it on. But if you never used it, I suggest using it. Or if you know about it and you just haven't used it, I suggest using it. And then if something's broken, then go back, just because it's so much better. It's actually there's some bugs in the classic editor that I actually haven't seen in the new editor, which is kind of funny because usually the new editor, the experimental one, is the one that breaks all the time, but it's actually the modern one that breaks, in my opinion, at least for me. It breaks all the time for me. So I'm constantly using the new expression editor with the experimental features. Unless something's broken, then I have to go back. And yeah. And then something that I always do, actually, if I'm ever building a really complex flow, I actually always read. Well, I don't always read it, but I have the documentation for the syntax for each single expression in my browser. Now, Microsoft does a great job at actually keeping these docs up to date, but they have really good examples inside of these docs, and I will show it after. But the docs for the functions, again, they're found in it's found in the Azure Logic Apps documentation, just because of the workflow definition. But everything in there is it also is with Power Automate. There's no differences really at all. So I always read that, making sure that I'm using the right expression, or if I need to search for an expression, I'm always just using that. And then if you're using, and I only do this actually if I'm using the modern expression editor. I'm copying the expression before I click on done or update, because sometimes I'm writing a super long expression and it's complex, and then I hit OK or I hit update, or I accidentally click away, and then all of a sudden it's gone. Like, and that's one of the bugs that I found, that when I hit OK or update, it actually doesn't update. It goes back to the previous version, and then I have to retype it. So I always copy it, and then I have it as a value in my clipboard. And as a really good tip, if you're using Windows and you have a lot of expressions and you're copying a lot of things, you can actually turn on clipboard history by holding Windows key and V. So Windows V, that'll open up your clipboard history. You might have to turn it on, and once you turn it on, every single thing you copy will be stored in that history, and you can access it wherever you are. So that's a good Office tip, not Power Automate, but I use that all the time. So I thought, and I know not many people know about that. So if you don't know about that, let me know in the chat about the Windows history, because it's a very, very crazy tip that I found. Helps me when I'm writing blogs, when I'm doing Power Apps, when I'm copying code, or when I'm doing expressions here, when I'm copying the expressions and I have multiple ones, and then I have to go back and find out the one I was using before. Another thing that it's not actually written here is, once I have an expression and it's a complex one, I actually copy it still, and I paste it into the comments section of that action, or I think they call it notes now. And the reason I do that is because when I'm like if I'm going to edit the flow, and I can't, you don't really see the full expression when you're just looking at it. You actually have to click in on it, and doing it like this, you'll actually be able to see it. I'll also go over another way of how I kind of like use it for debugging when I'm building flows, and showcase for the expression and how I can make it show in runtime, because I'll show what I mean. I know it sounds confusing. The last part is for the tips here is I always verify the expression is what I think it is when I'm hovering over the expression. And what I mean by that is when you hit that OK or when you hit done, what happens is it has that little block, and I'll show it here, but it has a little block, and it has like a couple dots in there, and you won't be able to see what the full expression is. I always put my mouse over top of it and hover over it, because again, sometimes it goes back on the other point there where um, the expression might just disappear, or it didn't fully update when I was typing for some reason. And that goes back on the bug that I kept finding. So anyway, I'm going to showcase all this stuff that I was talking about. I'm going to showcase it. So let's talk about it here. So I'm just going to over. Okay, so here I have, I'll zoom in a little bit so everybody can see. Let's name this my expressions. So first things first, I'll add a compose shape here. So the first thing I would do is, and I'll showcase it. So here's what the expression editor looks like, right? It's over here, and it's really, really small, and it's in this corner here. And what do I mean is that if I type in like, I'm just going to do some random expression here, replace, and then I hit dynamic content, and I don't have any dynamic content. So I'm actually just going to put in some string values here. I'll just put hello. Now, I can hit comma, and then I'll bring up the like, I guess parameter, or the actual documentation of this expression. Now, it's funny because it says FX here, but it's not actually power FX. Now, what the funny thing is that this in here, it's so hard to like do anything in here. It's so tiny. Now, what I don't like this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it to the new editor. And the way I do that, I'll do it again. You hit the settings icon, you go to view all power automate settings, and then you experimental features, you turn this on. Now, this won't just turn on experimental features for your editor, but it'll turn it on all experimental features for Power Automate. There's not that many. I don't even know them all. I think there's only like a couple, but I haven't seen anything break when I've been using it. So when I hit save, it's going to actually reload the page, and we're going to be able to see the new editor. Now, in the chat, if you have used the new editor before, let me know in the chat. If you haven't and you're definitely going to go try it now, let me know as well. Yeah, or once I show it to you and you don't like it, maybe tell me why you don't like it. But so now when here's what the new expression editor looks like. So now when I go to compose and I add a shape here, so now I have two little button icons here. So one of them is an expression, and the other one is going to be dynamic value. So just to showcase a dynamic value, now it's going to show all the dynamic content that I can pick from. And what's really cool about this is that it doesn't work fully, and it's experimental. But as we can see, we can actually see what the data type is on the side here. So right here, it's saying that this is text. And if I scroll down, it still says it's text. There's no example of, oh, this one's a number, C123, 123. So that's really cool. I can't wait for this to go like fully GA, because that's definitely so cool that I can see the actual, that's weird because date shows up as text. So yeah, again, some of this stuff is really is not fully functional, but it's pretty cool to actually see what they're working on, that they're actually able to pull in the data types in with the column with the values there. So now if we go to expressions, here's the new expression editor. And in here, so now if I type in like replace now, like, and I can hit enter, now it does basically the same thing, but I'm able to like, I can actually make my code look like code, like I do in Power Apps, where I'm, if I'm doing replace, I can go like this, and I can do like something else, like the text thing I was doing, like Power Automate or something. And then that should be a single quote anyway. So that's kind of how we can do it there. Now, um, what I'm going to do first, just so I can showcase some of these expressions, I'm actually just going to change this, and I'm just going to call this data, and I'm going to put in some fake data here. I have it in a notepad. So, and here's a good use case of why I do this. So a lot of things that I do, I actually have a like a Microsoft form or something that I'm getting people to type in email addresses maybe, and maybe I'm asking them to type in either one or more, and I can tell them, hey, I want you to separate those email addresses by a comma. For example, in this case, I'm separating each email address by a comma. And then again, this is coming from Microsoft form, let's pretend, or any automation, and I want to be able to basically put each of these ones on a new line, right? So there's a couple ways I can do that, but an easy way, and one of my favorite expressions is called replace. So I like using replace, and I'm going to grab another compose. Compose is my favorite action, if you haven't figured that out yet. And I really like compose, so I'm just going to name it replace one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up again with the new editor here, and I'm just going to go replace, and then in here. Actually a hot tip too that I forgot about is if sometimes this little parameter stuff, like it's telling me what is happening or like what it's expecting, the parameters, sometimes this doesn't show up for whatever reason. When it doesn't show up, the thing that I found is to literally just refresh the page. Obviously save your flow first, but then refresh the page. And then you should be able to see it again. And right now, how it's not shown, hot tip here, I can hold the control key and press spacebar. And it doesn't work actually on here apparently. Okay, so what I can do is I can just hit comma and then it'll bring it up again. So yeah, playing around with it, that's how you find stuff out. So right here it's telling me that the string that is searched for parameter 2 and updated with parameter 3. And what that means is this is parameter so text string, this is parameter 1, this is parameter 2, and this is parameter 3. So with that information, I want to replace, clicking in here. So I want to replace, and dynamic values automatically show up here on the bottom. I don't have to click between two different screens. Like the old editor, it's a little bit small, but that's okay. But now I can actually just click on my dynamic content there, and that shows up there, and I can put a comma, and now it's going to tell me, hey, what's the old text? I have to put everything in single quotes, remember, and I want to split it, or sorry, I want to replace it by a comma. And then if I do this, and then the new text, I just want to, so I don't know if this will work in the new editor. I guess we'll find out. But I want to basically, let's go back. I got to put single quotes, and I'm going to put I press enter. I want to basically put each email address on a new line, but still maintain the data type of text. So now, how do I get out of here? I actually just click away. So now I don't have to worry about clicking away and losing all my changes for my expression. I click away, and it's right there. And now I can see it, and to edit it, I just click on it, or I can click away, and that's how that works. So I'm going to save that, and we'll run it and see if it works properly. I guess the name didn't stick. So I'll just hit test. And then we can see here that, yeah, so now all of them are on a single line. Now that's great. Again, replace, I've used it for replacing like email addresses. If people want the email addresses like the at and then their domain, maybe they don't want that in there. They can replace that with blank space or replace it with something else. But that's mainly the use cases that I've used it for. And then one of my other favorite ones is is split. So if this is coming from Microsoft Form, pretend this is, I want to be able to do something for each user, right? Oh, wrong button. And now my screen's frozen. So basically, I want to do something for each user here. Now, if I go into a new step and I go to apply to each, control, and then, oh, that's not that one, wrong button. If I go to an apply to each here, and then if I try to select something, I could select the outputs, but it's not. Again, it's showing it as a text, and it is text. It's not an array, so it's only going to do one loop. When I want to do, a couple loops here, however many email addresses are there. So what I can do is I can even put the expression in here too. So I can put the expression. Just click on it in here. There we go. So I can do the expression. I can do split. Split is another one of my favorites. As we can see, what I was just talking about before, and this even happens in the old editor as well. Now I don't have any documentation to help me out here. So in this case, I could even just click on here. I can open in a new tab and then reference guide for all the documentation here. Now if I go to I forget which one it is, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to search it. So I know that it is called split. So if I just go split, there it is right there. So split, and then it's going to tell me right here the example, right? So split, you put the text in there, and then you put the delimiter of what you want it to split on. And they're both required fields. That's fine. So let's go try that out. So if I go in here, if I go split, and then I put in my dynamic content, not of that, but of the data. And then I split it on comma, and then I hit away. Now it's going to split my data there on each email address, and then we'll spit it out. Now, just to prove that this does work, I'll just put another one of my favorite shapes in there of a compose, my favorite one. And I'm just going to put in the current value, the current item, and then I'll hit save and I'll just test it out. And then we'll see if that works. It should work. So as we see, we have 3 here for each email address. There should be 3. And then if I just confirm, so I have Jake Cook there, and I have demo user and admin account there. So that's how we can use split. So we use split and replace. Now I do want to showcase one of my favorite things as well is I have to bring in another API here. So let me just grab it from this other screen. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in some data so I can do some manipulations on the JSON. Because one thing that I've seen, let me just copy this. So again, what I'm doing actually is I'm just copying a thing over. I can't click on it though. It's weird. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna save, and I'll just refresh my page, and then, and it's funny that everything kind of went away. Something was broken for sure. Yeah, something was broken. That's fine. So now I'm going to, don't worry about the action I'm using. I know it's a premium action, but it's just the easiest way for me to pull some information. Basically, I'm pulling users information from Microsoft Graph, and I'm just going to display the ID, the display name, mail, department, job title, and all the licenses that they have in Office. I'm only getting the top 15 because I don't want to sit here for a couple of minutes. And what this is going to do, it's going to spit out some JSON. Well, I'm going to need to parse it, right? So I'm going to parse the JSON. Dynamic content. I'm just going to put the body, and then I don't know the schema yet, so I'm just going to put that because I don't know the schema. And then what I'm going to do is I will just I actually don't. I'll need to get the schema first, so I'll have to save it, and then I'm going to test it, and then sign in. And then this could be anything. It doesn't have to be, invoke an HTTP request. I'm just getting something from Graph. It could be any type of JSON. So here's the JSON here. I'm basically just going to copy this so I can create a schema. So now if I copied it, I put it in here, generate from sample. I'm just going to paste in my schema or the data, and it creates a schema for me. So now with this, and it's funny because I had this demo set up a couple, I guess a couple weeks ago, and then going back on it just yesterday, it actually works now without me doing anything. Before, so I had a good demo of this, but I couldn't get this to break, I guess. I guess they fixed it. But basically before, I wasn't able, let me just do my favorite action again, compose. So before, I wasn't able to actually show the value. So basically, I want to be able to show, let's say, just let's do, we'll do display name. So, and then it automatically puts it into an apply to each. That's fine. But before it was broken and it literally it wouldn't let me do value. I did it, but then every time when the flow ran, it showed that these values were empty because they didn't exist, or it errored out and it said it was null. It said value was null, even though it wasn't. And the way I got around that, and the way you can get around it. So let's say, first of all, I'll just show that this will work. I'm going, and this is what I'm highlighting over it. But basically, I'll let the flow run, and I'm going to copy the data. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this. I'll copy it, and I'm going to paste it just so I have it in my my own little world here. I just showcase it. I basically pasting it. Why can't I zoom in here? Okay, well, let me zoom in. Oh, wait a second. There we go. Okay. So here we go. So now I have all this data here. This is what the graph API is pushing back. We do see some of these things are null. That's fine. But basically, what I want to do is I want to get if I wanted to, and this happens to me all the time, where if I go back to the flow, I go edit, and right here, flow is liking me today because now I can actually see everything. It's telling me I can see the ID, I can see the display name, I can see mail, but in some cases I won't be able to see anything. It won't show that. It'll just show value. Now, how could I traverse the JSON to actually allow me to pick each value? Is we use this property called item, and we can actually see how it works if I even selected dynamic content here. So I select dynamic content of, let's say, display name, and I hover over it. It's going to tell me. I don't know if you can see that. Let me actually just peek at the code instead. So basically, when I highlight over, it's showing me this. It's showing me items, bracket, apply to each, question mark, display name in square brackets. And that's actually how you traverse JSON. So if there was a property underneath a display name, for example, if display name had a property underneath it, like assign licenses do with with disabled plans, what I can do is I can actually go into, actually that's an array, so that won't actually work. But instead of going, if won't let me select any of these values here, what I can do is I can actually, again, what I always do is when my flow runs, I grab that JSON and I copy it into my Visual Studio, so then I have all the data. So if I ever want to traverse JSON, or if I want to get a certain value, I can easily just go, let's say if I want to get mail, actually, yeah, let's say mail. So then when I hit done here, I can actually get to mail just by going, I'm inside of this loop already. So what I can do is I can go, it's funny actually. I didn't realize Microsoft messed it up. You don't have to do items. Items makes it more confusing. And that just broke over there. So let me just fix that. I'll put value back. So instead of doing items, what you can actually do is you can do item. This is being weird. Click away, in it. Okay, so what I do is I can do item, and I'm not, my thing's not showing up again, so that's nice. But item, and then I can go question mark and square brackets, and just to show that I'm not crazy, so item right here. So what I want to do, so instead of you can use periods or you can use brackets. I always use brackets just because it's the Power Automate way of doing it. But the item property is used when inside of a repeating action. So we are inside of a repeating action. We're inside of this array, or sorry, this apply to each. So I can use the regular term item, meaning that it's the current item. And the current item has many properties, right? But what I care about is the mail property. So if I do that and I hit away, it'll actually, it's item question mark mail. but that'll actually bring in the mail property for each record that gets run. And then for I have a really good technique of building tree. Let me just open up my SharePoint site. I have a I'll put it over here. So I have a SharePoint site here. This is really, I'm going to showcase a trigger condition now. So trigger condition. If I go, I'll create a new flow here. So I'll just make sure this is saved, and I'll go out of it. Actually, I'll just do it in the same one. It should be fine. What I'll do is I'll just, and this will help me later. I'll put it inside a scope just to make it go away. Okay. What I'm going to do over here is I'm going to, first I'm going to delete this trigger, and I'm going to do a SharePoint trigger. So SharePoint, and then I'm going to do, got it. When an item is created or modified, that's what I want. And I'm going to select this Power Platform Demos. Where is it? Power Platform Demos. And then the list item here is going to be test list. And yeah, that's fine. So now, no matter what, every item that gets created or modified, it's going to trigger this flow, right? So I'm just going to save it, and then I'm going to let it, I'm going to trigger it. Just by hitting new, I'll just put test me. And it's saved now. Okay, so I'm just going to go manually. I'll manually test it. Okay, so now I'm going to put stage 1 done. I'll do stage 1 done. Status, that's fine. I'll do stage 1 done, and that is fine. Okay, I'll hit save. Now test me. Now this should run. So now the reason I'm doing that is because now I have the outputs here, right? The outputs are very important. So I copy that, and I'm going to paste it into a code editor. I use Visual Studio Code just because it's really easy and free. So now I have all of this here. So now I can see that when the flow is triggered, this is what's the body of what's happening here. I have ID of 5 of the title test me. Stage 1 is true. Stage 1 done. Stage 2 done is false. Now let's say if I wanted to only trigger this flow if stage 1 is set to true. So I do not want the flow to trigger if it's set to false, or if both are set to false. I only want the flow to trigger if stage 1 is equal to true. So what I can do is, now I have this stage 1 done field name. I can copy this, and I can go into here. Now, there's multiple ways I can go in here, and I can go settings, and I can go add a trigger condition. And what's lovely about this is you don't have to do something complex. If there's 2 trigger conditions, I can do 2 of them, which I will, which I'll do. Both of the statuses are to true, or the values are to true. Now, right, it doesn't really give you any details of what it wants in here. Like, what are you supposed to put in here, right? Like, there's no syntax or anything. So what I do is I actually use another action to help me do that. So, and the action is called filter array. So when I use a filter array, basically I want to put, I don't really need anything in there. I don't need anything at the top. What I want to do is I want to put the value. So the value I'm looking for, that's going to be, let's find it here. So stage 1 done. And I want that to equal to, and again, it was a Boolean value, just to show you what that means. Where's my thing? So it says that this is a true. You see how it's in blue? There's no there's no double quotes or single quotes or anything, meaning that it is a Boolean value. It's true or false, as we can see here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, just to follow the same structure, is I'm just going to put true, and then I'll hit OK. Now that is set to true. Now what I can do is I can go edit in advanced mode, and I can grab this, I can copy it, and then I can go up here, and I can go settings, And then I can go add condition, and I can add my condition right there. And I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to change this to stage 2 equals done. So that way this flow is only going to trigger if stage 1 is done and stage 2 is done, both set to true. So when I hit done, now I can get rid of this filter, or I don't need it. I just used it to help me build the trigger condition. And now I'm going to save, and then I'll test it. And I'll just do manual. First I will. We've seen how fast it triggered. I have a really high tiered license, so I think it triggers like immediately. So if I go to my Power Platform here and I go new, and I'm just going to name this one won't trigger, and I'll put 1 as stage 2 is done. Yes, I'll check that one, and I'll hit save. And then I'll go back to my flow here. As you can see, it still has not triggered. And I will go to a new item, and I will go will trigger. And then if I go yes, yes, now I hit save. Now it's going to trigger just to show it still hasn't triggered. Hit save. And then I go back to flow and watch it not trigger. It triggered, yeah. So now we're good. Now just to prove that it is the right one, I'll hit click download. I'll copy that. I'll go over to my Visual Studio, paste it, format it, and now we can see that is the right one. Yeah. So we'll trigger, and again, that's going to save me a lot of API calls. And look how easy it was to build that trigger condition, because there's no syntax for some reason in that in like in the settings. Now let's say if I let's say if I want kind of going backwards now. Let's say if I wanted to with everything that's happening within this HTTP request, let's say if I only want to get the let's say if I change this, let me see. That's pretty, yeah. Yeah, okay. So let's even if I change this to top of the first person, obviously it's still going to I'll still leave it at 15. But let's say if I just wanted to get the very first email address here, and I don't want this apply to each, right? So what I can do, because it's gonna, if I go right here, and then compose again, my favorite one. So compose, and then if I go to dynamic content here, and again, if I choose anything from that, if I hit display name, if I hit mail, department, job title, if I hit any of these, it's going to automatically put it into an apply to each. So just to show, it automatically does it. I don't want that. I only want to get the first value. So let's just drag that back out. And if you can guess correctly, then you can guess exactly where I'm going with this. I'm going to use the expression called, once it's, oopsie, I'm going to use the expression. I need to minimize that. No, I play up the expression editor so well that it doesn't like me now. Okay, so I'm going to use first, and I don't like how my syntax doesn't show up. So I don't know. I can go over here. I can go logical. So first, where's first at? First is in the where is first? It's in logical collection. So it's in collection. So we're gonna do first. Yeah, so first, if I click on it, I don't like the yellowness, get rid of that. So first, right here, we can see that it's basically the type of I can go first and I can go the collection name. So it's pretty simple. It's not very hard. And then also I actually, I never really used something like this before, but you can actually go first hello, and it'll get you the first letter. So if you pass in a string, it's going to give you the first letter. But if you pass in an array, it'll give you the first item. So be aware of that. Same with length. Length also does the same thing. If you use the length expression, it will pass in a string. It'll get you the length of the string. If you pass in an array, it'll give you the length of the array or how many items are in that array. So very, very cool. So now, now that I know the syntax, I can go first and I can just go what I want to get the first display name. So if I go, oops, you can't do it that way actually. So it's actually, this is where you have to traverse the JSON. Oh, great, it's broken. So I'm going to delete that and I'm just going to reapply that here. So I'm going to go compose. And then in here, I'll change the name of this to first mail. Actually, I'll do first ID because mail, I believe the first person's mail doesn't exist. So in here, I'm just going to go, first, and then I'm going to go quotations. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do body, because now I don't want to. If I click anything else, it's going to automatically put in the it's automatically going to put in the apply to each. So now if I go body, okay, so body, and then if I go question mark, and then square brackets, and then in there, and then I can go ID, and then go like that. That should work. First that and that, and then it should grab the first email there. Sorry, the first ID. If it doesn't, then I know why. And then I should have just did it automatic. That's okay. And then try me. I have to select both of them to that. Hit save. If I go back, no, do that. Okay, so right here we see that the first ID was null, so it says unable to process the first ID. The template language expects this parameter to be an array or a string. The provided value is type null. So bad example of doing that, as we can see, even though the first value is not. Oh, I know why. Okay, my bad. So what I did is I actually tried to get to ID without actually going through the value first. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to find that there. The value first. So what I need to do, move my mouse. So now, oh, I hate that it does that. There we go. So if I go first, and then go like this. So there we go. I had to put the value in there first. And then at the very end, I use the question mark because it's an optional parameter, really. So then I go square brackets, and then I go single quotes, and now I want to get the ID. So now this should work because now if I go back to my structure here, at the very top, we have, oh, it's the wrong one. So at the very top here, it's still the wrong one. There we go. So if I go to the top, we see that we have value, and then underneath the value, we have all these properties. So at the before, what I tried to do is I tried to get the ID outside of value. So ID should have been out here somewhere, but value is the property we wanted to go inside. So that's why we are going into the value using a question mark here. Zoom in. Oh, using a question mark, going into value, and then outside of the first, I do another question mark, and then I put ID, and that'll get me the ID. Now, if I go test it, and I'm just going to go from the one that failed. Now it should work. Yep. So now it works properly. And then one last expression that is one of my favorites that not many people know about. Let me refresh my screen just because I don't think it doesn't even show up in the expressions. So let me see here. what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make this fail on purpose. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove this in here, and that's going to, it should fail. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to have another action over here. I'll just name it scope, or I mean, sorry, I'm going to search for scope, and I'll just name it. I'll going to catch some errors, but I'm going to do it a really cool way. So if I go has failed, I'm only going to run this one if, let me just showcase what I did there. So I'm going to hit the 3 dots, and this is just to showcase something really cool. So right now, the configure run after is default to when scope up here is successful. That's when catch will run. But I don't want that. I only want catch to run when it's failed. So when scope has failed, catch will run, or catch will run whatever's inside of it. And what I'm going to do is inside of it, I'll do my favorite action of a compose, and then I'm going to go in here. Now I really want the syntax to show up because otherwise it really won't help me. Perfect. Okay, so now we can see that the syntax shows up here with all the different properties. And actually, oh sweet, so it actually shows up. Before, maybe it's because I'm using the new editor, but result never showed up before. So result is one of my favorites. When I click on it, I can see it returns the results from the top level actions in the specified scoped action, such as a for each, loop, until, or scoped action. So what does that mean? So when I click on it and I kind of use it, it's basically just saying, hey, give me your scope name as a string, right? So I'm just going to go like this, single quotes, and basically I want to get the results of my scope. So if I type in scope, that's the scope action above it. Now, if I click away, now I'm going to get the result of scope. So now when I hit test, and I'll go automatic, I'll just test with this one. And I don't know, I don't think, yeah, so there we go. So basically this failed. That makes sense. But now this ran, and what is this going to show us? It's going to show us some pretty cool stuff here. So I'm just going to copy it and I'll put it into Visual Studio to easily read. So this is the information. Actually, no, it's not. This is the info. What's going on? Oh, yeah, it is. Holy, okay. So this is the information that it came back with. It came back with the name of the action, of that action inside of my scope, okay? And then it tells me the outputs of that, of the above action was status 200, which was true. If we go back, we can see that scope here. This was true. This is the HTTP action did work. It's successful. Then we go down and I can even go, can I do that? Okay, yeah, so I can go outputs here. I don't care about that. And then I can go, the next action here is parse JSON, and then the contents value, it tells me everything in there. And then I can also scroll down. Now, what's really cool is that I can actually filter this on failed. Now I can see that it actually shows up that my status here, it shows failed. So I'm actually able, if I wanted to, is I could send this code here, code invalid template, and the message. If the flow fails, I have the actual message, the error message that I can use to send off to somebody in case they need to, if they want to, if they need to troubleshoot it. Now they have the actual error message, which is really cool. Now, again, I've used results, and you can use results to see like the different information. You can, it comes back with a lot of information, as you can see. It comes back with everything that's in my apply to each loop. So it comes back with a lot of information. Again, you don't have to select all the information. I could have easily just asked for the information inside my apply to each, or if the scope, if this action here was the only action inside of my scope and it failed, then it would only show me that one. And I believe, yeah, so I believe that is, I'm just looking at time. Yeah, so that is really kind of what I wanted to showcase here today. I'll go back to my slides here. What's going on here? Oh, there we go. So I'll just go back just because I have a thank you card, and yeah, thank you everybody at Iteration Insights for letting me speak here today. And I really hope somebody learned something, even if it's just the Windows hotkey to turn on the clipboard history.